Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Boxing Authorities. Joining me from his home studio in Pittsburgh, Luther Dupree Jr., and to my right, Smokin Jim Frazier, and my name is Claudio Relsano. Well, this is part two of the history of Pittsburgh boxers. And like I said, we already talked about some legendary fighters like Fritzy Zivic and Charlie Burley. But now we got a bunch of other guys. We're going to jump right into it. Luther, we're going to start off with Harry Greb, Hall of Famer from Pittsburgh. He was 261 wins, 18 losses, 49 KOs, 19 ties. He was a welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight champ. He was light heavyweight champ 1922 to 23. And many consider him the best pound-for-pound fighter ever. But some facts about him. He fought 298 times in 13 years. That's 23 fights a year, Luther and Jim. He was light heavyweight champ, as I said, middleweight champ from 23 to 26. He was only KO'd 2 times in his career, and he fought several fights with one eye. Okay? Luther, your thoughts on the great Harry Greb?
Yeah, man. Edward Henry Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill. You know,
right.
Everybody says he's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of all time. You know, light heavyweight champion, 22 to 23, world middleweight champion, 23 to 26. You know, he was just remarkable, man. Like you said, over 260 wins, 49 knockouts. And what I like about him, you know, he had a great fighting style, and he would fight tough competition. Back then, he would fight highly skilled African-American boxers, which wasn't done at the time. Right. He fought Jack Blackburn. You know, he fought Kid Norfolk. He fought Tiger Flowers.
Right.
This was unheard of. You know, there were a lot of white boxers who refused to do so. He was one of the real ones, and that's why he's regarded as pound for pound, one of the toughest of all time. He fought everybody. Ring Magazine in 1955, you know, Hall of Fame. So he just was great. You know, I love his fighting spirit, very tough, and would fight anybody. So I respect that the most about Harry.
You mentioned Tiger Flowers. He fought Slapsy Maxie Rosenblum, Mickey Walker, Tommy Loughran 4 times. Gene Tunney, the great Hall of Famer Gene Tunney, and Tommy Gibbons. And he, like you said, he fought everybody, beat everybody. But the thing that got me, Jim, before you go on with your comments, 23 times a year? 23 times a year. I mean, who the hell does that? That'll never, you know, you talk about records, that'll never happen. Your thoughts on Harry Greb?
Harry Greb was blind in one eye and couldn't see well out the other, man. 32, he died at 32, way too young. Yeah. Another nickname was Smoke City Wildcat. Don't forget, only man ever beat Gene Tunney. This is a guy that was voted the second greatest pound for pound in the history of boxing next to Sugar Ray Robinson, and he fought 45 times in 1 year.
Unbelievable.
That's unreal. And I would be remiss if I could not mention another legend that's not on our list. How about Frank Claus from Turtle Creek? From 1904 to 1918, middleweight champion. In 1913, Boxing Hall of Fame. And in 1974, ranked number 6 middleweight of all time. And he's from Turtle Creek. I think he's worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, thank you for sure.
There ain't too many tough guys out of Turtle Creek.
We have so many guys to mention, so I'm glad Jim mentioned him for sure. The next guy is a little closer to all of our ages that we saw early on and pretty much followed his entire career. Was a big star here in Pittsburgh, and that's Paul Spadafora, who was 49-1-1, 19 KOs out of McKees Rocks, close to Pittsburgh. He was the IBF lightweight champ. He beat some nice names like Angel Manfredi and Israel Cardona. Luther, your thoughts on Paul Spadafora?
Paul Spadafora, the Pittsburgh kid, 5'9", great boxer. Like you said, out of McKees Rocks, came up from some difficult circumstances,
right.
Amateur background. You know, won 75 matches out of 80 bouts. We love the Pittsburgh kid, man. He's given Steel City Sports World a lot of shout-outs through the years, trained by the great Tommy Yankello. Just an amazing fighter, man. I wish he really could have reached his full potential. You know, we saw it. You know, like you said, he beat Angel Manfredi. And he also, you know, he gave Floyd Mayweather some work in sparring. And
right.
Not many people did that. He went through the doghouse rules and gave it to Floyd, and hardly anyone in the history can say that. Paul Spadafora is one of those guys. great basketball player as well at Langley High School. He was an amazing athlete. And I think he really could have had a chance to do some things, to win a couple major titles and make some great money. But sometimes, some of the outside the ring, some of those demons got a hold of him. Right. But still, a great fighter, definitely a Pittsburgh legend. He put Pittsburgh back on the map. It was gone for a while, but he brought us back.
Sure did.
So we're all thankful for Paul for bringing that notoriety and the spotlight back to Pittsburgh. Great champion. The Pittsburgh kid did a lot of great things.
He sure did. And you mentioned, yes, he was trained by Tommy Yankello for many, many years. Towards the end of his career, he was trained by Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, which he loves Sweet Pea as well. He sparred with Floyd, as you mentioned, and he knocked him down. There's a video where he knocked him down. And so let me ask you, Jim, before you go with your comments, who do you think would have won a fight between Spadafore and Floyd?
Floyd knows, just like I know, that he'd have got beat by Spadafore.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Luther, you make a great point. Before I ask you that question, and again, let Jim with his comments, he had a lot of demons early in pretty much his entire life and career, unfortunately. But he still accomplished a lot despite all those demons. Luther, who would you have taken between Paul and Floyd?
Well, we know sparring and in the ring is different. Spadafore was amazing in that sparring session. But I don't think anybody beats Floyd in the ring. It would have been a tough fight, but I think Floyd gets a decision over Paul Spadafore in the ring. But it would have been a tough fight.
And
I don't have anybody beat.
And a beautiful scientific fight. You know that. And a beautiful scientific fight. Jim, your thoughts on Paul Spadafore?
Well, he has been shot, and he shot at people. Listen, Paul Spadafore, I think, went 48-0 before he ever lost a fight. This is a guy that I watched, when he trained at Yankello's gym and when he trained with Buzzy up in California, Pennsylvania. Right. I've never seen anybody work harder. Paul Spadafore set an example for guys like that came behind him, like Monte, Mesa, Vaquan Kimbrough, Rod Salka. Those guys seen the work ethic that Paul Spadafore put in to the ring. So when he was training, he was a lethal weapon, man. Right. He didn't have the power. That's the only thing he didn't have, but you couldn't hit him. Right. He was in top shape. He was a great fighter, like Luther says, in the pocket. There was nobody better, and nobody was going to outwork him. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention another Pittsburgh fighter, Frank Moran, who played football at Pitt, played semi-pro football in Pittsburgh. He had a right hand that they called the Mary Ann. He was the Great White Hope. He was the Fighting Dennis, and he fought 2 times for the world championship. He fought Jack Johnson in 1914, but he went on to a career in movies, made 135 movies over a 25-year period, the great Frank Moran.
That's why you're a boxing historian, brother, or a boxing authority. Right, all right. Okay. Real quick, Spadafore, Hall of Famer or not? Luther.
Pittsburgh Hall of Famer for sure.
I'm talking about the boxing Hall of Fame.
As far as other ones, I think no, because he didn't have those notable fights.
Okay.
He was really close, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer just because he didn't have those notable fights at the world-class level. I say no. I
agree. Smokin' Jim?
What's that called when you die post? What's that? When they
posthumously.
Yeah, I think that he'll go in then. They ain't gonna let him have a mic when he's live again, man. After what happened at the New Jersey Hall of Fame, I think he's done for the Hall of Fame for a while. But I think he should go into the International and the Boxing Hall of Fame. He was that good.
All right. Next guy, who Smokin' Jim has said, and I love this line, if he would have stayed in the light heavyweight division, he could have been the Joe Louis of that division. But he did a great job in the light heavies, and I think was a more than respectable heavyweight champion. And that's Michael Moore, who was 52-4-1, 40 KOs out of Menneson. He was a WBO light heavyweight champ, 22 straight KOs as a light heavyweight. And then as a heavyweight, WBO, WBA, and IBF heavyweight title, 3-time heavyweight champ. Only 4 fighters have won a title at light heavyweight and heavyweight. Roy Jones Jr., Michael Spinks, James Toney, and Michael Moore. He beat guys like Vasily Yurov, Francois Botha, Axel Schultz, Evander, Frankie Swindell, Bone Crusher Smith, Burt Cooper, Alex Stewart, Leslie Stewart. Jim, your thoughts on Michael Moore?
Luther,
your thoughts on Michael Moore?
Okay, all right, Michael Moore. Listen, man, a great boxer. I had a chance to watch his entire career, southpaw. In his first undefeated, his first 35. Like you said, man, he's one of 4 guys to do something, win a light heavyweight and a heavyweight title. Great champion. I love watching him fight. That fight with Evander, I didn't think he would win. He came through and beat Evander, got the title. I was disappointed that he lost to George Foreman because I really thought he had a chance to do something great, but he got caught with a right hand, got a little too cocky, put his guard down. Michael Moore, very underrated. He should be in the Hall of Fame without a doubt, but he had a great amateur career as well. Out of Mesa, PA, football player, great athlete. He did some great things in the ring, and I was just happy I got a chance to see him, man. He had power in both hands. I thought he still could have even done some other things, but great record. He has to be in the Hall of Fame. What he's done, the victories he's had, put him in the Hall of Fame, man.
Let me ask both of you this real quick. He dominated the light heavy division. Would you say he dominated his era of the heavyweight division? Luther first.
No, he didn't dominate.
Okay.
But he was a player. He was a competitor. He beat Holyfield the first time and got his belt. Then he got destroyed by that big right George Foreman. Okay. So no, he didn't dominate the heavyweight.
All right.
But he was a contender and he did have the belt. But light heavy, he dominated, cleaned out the division.
Sure did.
And was going down as the greatest all time. But I'm glad he went to heavyweight, made more money, and he got a title out of it.
Smokin' Jim.
well, the correct Luther, he only played 1 year of football, his senior year, but yes, he dominated the heavyweight division. Anytime you win
How many years he played? I said he was a
anytime you
great
win
football
3
player.
world championships, you dominate
Yeah.
the heavyweight division.
fought a few nice fighters.
That's not dominating.
Well, he
won
won the
3
heavyweight
different times. He
championship
didn't-
3 times.
Listen, okay. What I consider domination is when you hold it for a year or two. He won it in 92, the WBO. He won the WBA in 94. And then in 96, he won the IBF. I wouldn't say that's complete domination.
Oh, I didn't know you was Webster's. I didn't know you was the dictionary, but okay.
No,
That's
I'm
how
just
you
telling
defined it?
I mean, that's great. Yes, he won 3 titles
Oh, happy
at 3 different
Kwanzaa.
times. But domination, I would like to see somebody hold it for a year. Now, he did have the IBF from 96 to 97.
Right.
But the WBO only in 92. The WBA in 94.
Smokin' Jim.
Well, listen, Michael Moore, everybody knows, is a friend of mine. I've been watching
Uh-oh.
him box
There it comes.
Lou.
since he's been 12 years old. And I remember, man, when they used to put his grandfather would put him in the ring with guys that were 3-4 years older than him, and all he would do was cover up. He wouldn't throw punches. Later on, I don't know why I was in Uniontown, PA, but for some fights when he was 16, and everybody kept talking about this Michael Moore is going to the Olympics is great. I've never seen a better amateur when I seen him at that time. He turned pro early. This guy was, don't forget, he's the first, they call him the Menneson Mauler. I never heard anybody call him that. But he's the first softball to win a heavyweight championship, man. And what a great career. 22-0 with 22 knockouts as a light heavyweight. But I would be remiss, and you mentioned his name, Claudio, if I didn't give a little praise to a guy from Washington, PA, Sammy Agnock.
Angot. Yeah.
Walter Waite, fought Sugar Ray Robinson, Fritzy Zivic, Henry Armstrong. They called him the Washington Windmill. 94 wins, Ring Magazine Hall of Fame in 1973, International Hall of Fame in 1998. How you say that last name?
Well, it's Angot.
Angot.
It's really Angati. He changed it.
Yeah, he was
he was Italian.
And
And
his
Luther,
first
how
name,
can I
he changed
forget
his
an
first
Italian
name
guy?
too, right?
Probably Salvatore.
Yeah, Salvatore. He changed
Well,
that too.
Salvatore. Sammy is kind of a nickname for.
Am I forgetting my
You're
Italian?
doing good. You did better than me. I for some reason, I don't know how the hell I missed him. Luther, I missed an Italian guy. You believe that?
Luther can't hear. He looked like he got Alzheimer's.
I didn't catch that one.
No, I said I missed an Italian guy, Sam Angot. Sam Angot.
Right.
All right.
You
But-
missed him too, huh, Lou?
Yeah, Michael Moore, I believe, I'm with you, Luther. He's definitely a Hall of Famer. When we come back, we have another legendary name in boxing annals. Right back with the Boxing Authorities. Welcome back to the Boxing Authorities. Well, we have another legendary, iconic fighter out of Pittsburgh, Billy, the Pittsburgh Kid Khan. 64-11, 15 knockouts, Hall of Famer. He was one of the first. He was in the first class ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. Light heavyweight champ. He beat such legends as Young Corbett, Emilio Bettina, who he won the belt from in 1939, Gus Lesnovich, Henry Cooper, who Jim mentions all the time, who fought Muhammad Ali, heavyweight. Lee Savold, he beat him twice, who was a big heavyweight. And Tony Zell, the Hall of Fame middleweight. Okay, now, and of course, he lost twice to the iconic Joe Louis, and one of them was an iconic fight that he was winning the fight for 12 rounds until Joe knocked him out in the 13th. And in their rematch, Joe Louis had the great quote, Jim and Luther, he can run, but he can't hide. Let's see some video on Billy Conn. And Jim, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on the great Billy Conn.
Well, you know, Billy Conn, the Pittsburgh Kid, helped put southwestern Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh on the map.
Sure did.
And don't forget that Billy Conn fought all the way till he was 75 years old. He beat up a robber in a 7-Eleven or a convenience store. So, you know, what a great guy, man. To go from light heavyweight to heavyweight, and he fought almost everybody. And don't forget, he lost about 3-4 years out of the prime of his career when he went and fought in the war.
Right.
And so a lot of those guys, man, some of their best, some of their best fights we never really got to see because, you know, they was defending our country in World War II. So, what a great fighter, man. Tough, Pittsburgh tough. And don't forget, back in the day, the Duquesne Club, man, used to have professional fights 5 days a week. And, at one time, what we have, Claudio, about, 4 or 5 world champions at one time, all from Pittsburgh.
That's what I'm saying. Pittsburgh is underrated, and we had a ton of clubs in Pittsburgh. You mentioned the Duquesne Gardens and Forbes Field, which was a big baseball stadium, ballpark back then. But they had fights like every month over there, and they packed the place with great names like Greb and Zivic, and of course Billy Conn and Ezra Charles beat Jersey Joe Walcott, or Jersey Joe beat him at Forbes Field. Luther, the thing that sticks out about Billy Conn after watching those videos is how technically sound he was. And again, back then, a lot of those guys were roughhousers, and Billy was a pretty stylistic boxer. But your thoughts on the great Billy Conn?
Oh, man, the Pittsburgh Kid, the original Pittsburgh Kid, 6'1". Like you said, he was fluid, and the fact that he was willing to give up his world title just to have a chance to go up against the great Joe Louis. And he was winning that fight, as we saw, but then he got too greedy. As he said, he got too thick in the head and tried to go for the knockout, and then, it didn't end well for him. But, man, just a true legend. Great friends with Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney.
Right.
Just an amazing man. Pop culture, he was in the Hollywood film back in 2006. Billy Conn was mentioned. Right. Black Dahlia. He also played Conn in the Pittsburgh Kid, a movie back in 1941. Just a true legend. We have a street named up against him, Billy Conn Boulevard, out in North Craig. Just a legend, man. These are the guys that made Pittsburgh boxing what it was about, man. You talk about him, you talk about the legends, Zivic, Charlie Burley. Pittsburgh has a rich history, and I think we can get it back. Despite Jim hating on all these current boxers, I think we can get it back, man. Those were levels that we can reach again, Jim.
But you know what? To Jim's point, though, when you think of Conn, you think of Joe Louis. You think of Greb and Zivic. You think of each other, and they fought big. They had an opponent to elevate their names, and I do understand what Jim's talking about. So I'm with you there. But another thing about Billy Conn, you mentioned some nice facts about him. Somebody who I cared for deeply was a very good friend of mine. Joe LaQuatra had some events here in Pittsburgh years ago, and he included Conn and Joe Louis here. And those guys were very tight. Louis and Conn were very close. But every event they had here was for a charity, and people just jam-packed the place because they wanted to see these guys and meet them. And Joey said how great Louis and Conn were with everybody. And again, the old saying, they just don't make them like that anymore. But again, with Billy Conn, the thing that I noticed after watching those videos is how technically sound he was. But, like you said, Luther, and he said it, that he went for the knockout against Joe Louis. You know, you're not going to knock Joe Louis out, okay? And he didn't have a knockout punch. He should have just continued, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But he laughed about it after the fight and joked about it. I think the sad thing is, due to the war, he didn't fight him again for a couple more years. But again, it was a blockbuster, major event. Jim, can you imagine a rematch today, and Luther too, between Conn and Louis? Wow, the numbers, huh?
People talking about Fury and that Wilder, man. Those are real fighters.
No, you're
Conn
right.
And Louis.
You're right.
You know, the whole world shut down for
You're right.
those when those guys fought.
Excellent point. The next guy is somebody who, again, I got to meet through Joe LaQuatra back in 2003. And I met this guy in Rochester, New York, for the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame. The first thing I noticed about our next legend is how good he looked. Man, he always styled. He always dressed good. His hair looked good. He always had that championship ring that he won in boxing at Madison Square Garden. He was just a great guy, and everybody loved him. That's Andy Kid DePaul. He was 28, 8-1 as a pro. He was a middleweight in 1950, and this is when it mattered. Okay, no knock on anybody today, but he was ranked number 9 in the world at middleweight. And back then, there was everybody trying to get through that one door. Not like today where you have all these different things. He was number 9 in the world. He was a highly decorated amateur at 82-10, 82 and 10. 1946, Dapper Dan 135-pound Golden Glove champion in Pittsburgh, which was a big deal back then, Jim will tell you. And 135 AAU champion, AMA champion. 1947, he was a 145-pound Pittsburgh Golden Gloves champion. And in 1947, he was 135 Eastern Golden Gloves champ, which was held at Madison Square Garden. And he proudly wore that ring all his life. And his son is a very good judge. Dana does a great job as a judge. 1982, Pennsylvania Hall of Fame. Sports Hall of Fame, 1986, the Italian-American Sports Hall of Fame. In 2007, he was inducted to the Golden Gloves Hall of Fame. Highly decorated guy. Another thing, real quick, before we get to Luther and your thoughts, he was also a big-time WWF referee in the 70s days, refereed a lot of Bruno Sammartino fights. And I remember seeing him one time reffing a fight with Tito Santana at Civic Arena. I'll never forget that. But Luther, and again, he's a great guy. Luther, your thoughts on the Hall of Famer, Andy Kid DePaul?
Yeah, just like you said, a true legend of the sport, man. Andy Kidd. I had a chance to be at the ceremony in 2007 at Heinz Field. Just a tremendous experience. Boxing was catching fire back then. Andy Kidd, great guy, great ambassador for the sport. And you said he used to do a lot of refereeing as a boxer and professional wrestler, in the city. So that was pretty great. Just a great guy, true legend, man. Amateur career was great. Golden Gloves, they made a big thing every time he would come in. Just a nice, friendly guy. And he still had his wits back in 2007 and was just, a great guy to be around, man. He made you feel great. I know he didn't know me from a can of paint, but we talked and had a great experience. Just a great guy, real true ambassador for the sport.
Real quick before we get to Jim, whenever I met him in Rochester, New York, I had to call my dad. I said, Dad, I was calling him just to see, give him an update. And I said, yeah, I met Andy Kid DePaul. And my dad said, you met Andy Kid DePaul? And he spoke to my dad and was so great to my dad. And him and Joe LaQuatra were meeting Carmen Basilio later that day, and they got my dad an autographed picture of Carmen. So my dad, even he was at the time, I believe my dad was 74 years old. He was like a little kid again when he talked to Andy Kid DePaul, and he got that picture of Carmen Basilio. And just great guys. And I get even funny even thinking about that because they made my dad really feel special. So, Jim, your thoughts on Andy Kidd?
And I'm glad you brought that up because my dad is He loves boxing, boxing historian, and when I mentioned that I met Andy Kidd DePaul the first time, my dad told me about the history of Andy Kidd DePaul and how great he was. This guy took me under his wing, man. He didn't have to. He was a mentor to me. He used to tell me about the stories about his good friend Rocky Marciano. Yeah. They both fought for the national championship. Andy Kidd won the gold, Rocky won the bronze, and he used to tease Rocky all the time, hey, I got the gold. Right. And I've never, ever heard anybody say he was the commissioner of boxing in the state of Pennsylvania and Western Pennsylvania. I've never heard anybody say a bad word about Andy Kidd DePaul, but the little short guy that took over after him, nobody ever says anything good about him. But, hey, you know, it was a big loss. It was a big blow to the city of Pittsburgh and the boxing community when guys like Andy Kidd DePaul and Jimmy Savetic passed away.
That's for sure. And again, made my dad feel special. And every time I was with him, because we used to go out with a bunch of guys, and I was always the youngest one, Lutheran Jim, we'd go to a dinner that Joe LaCroix would take us all to. And I wouldn't say a word. I would just listen to the stories, you know, and they always made me feel welcome. They were great with me, and I miss Andy. And again, his son Dana is a big-time judge.
Dana was a good football player at Westminster.
Oh, yeah,
they
that's
won
right.
a national championship there. You know, very good football player.
Our next guy is, again, legend Vaquan Kimbrough out of Aliquippa, 21-5-3, 7 KOs. He was the USBA lightweight champion, defended it 4 times, IBC featherweight champ, NABC America's featherweight champ, and NABC junior lightweight champ. Amateur career 125-12, was the #1 light heavyweight April of 2002 by winning the U.S. Nationals, and was the first U.S. champ since Michael Moore. Jim, I'm going to start with you because you know Vaquan really well. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I tell you what, Vaquan is probably my best friend in boxing. I don't try to. I'm a newspaper reporter, so I never try to get close to athletes because it affects when you have to critique them.
Right.
And Vaquan was the greatest amateur fighter in the history, probably of southwestern Pennsylvania. Used to destroy Monte, Mesa, Clay, who ended up being a better professional than Vaquan. But his dad was a great athlete, Mike Kimbrough. He was the star running back for Hopewell when Tony Dorsett was only a defensive back. They was both the same year in school. But when Mike got hurt his junior year, they reluctantly moved Tony Dorsett, who never played offense before because he was afraid to get hurt. Because the way he hit on defense, he didn't want nobody to hit him like that. And he took the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and the rest was history. But great basketball player too, Mike. But for Vaquan, you know, I'll tell you what, man, would they say women and wine can ruin you? I don't know about the wine part, but the women loved him, man. He was a disappointment. We have to say his professional career went down as a disappointment. We thought that he would be the next Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, but, you know, he got himself involved in a couple of really tough fights. I think they moved him faster than his management wanted to. I think he was a little jealous of Monte Mesa Clay, who was stablemates. Monte was progressing a little faster. Vaquan took on a couple of opponents maybe he wasn't quite ready for, and the downfall started. But, man, some of my greatest moments was watching him fight out Mountaineer. Yeah. Ted Arnaud, the CEO, used to have the whole top floor. And I can tell you stories about Joey Porter and Casey Hampton at the after parties. That's for another show.
That's for another show.
But some great times, man. And I tell you what, all the women loved him, man. Right. And Magic Johnson might have had the rainbow colors selling for Vaquan.
And again, he was trained by the great Tommy Yankello, who will eventually get on our show.
Yeah.
Luther, your thoughts on Vaquan Kimbrough?
Well, Jim said it all, man. But Vaquan, man, just a great, tremendous talent, amateur. I don't think we've seen an amateur career so great. I mean, he was so special as an athlete. As far as the pro career, didn't go quite the way he wanted. Yeah, he had the USBA, the WBA, NABA titles. I just thought he could have done so much more, but he got a couple bad beatings When he stepped up in competition. I think he could have gone down and really gotten a major title. But hey, it's boxing. One punch can change a lot of things. But at Mountaineer, at the height of his career, man, he would have that whole building sold out.
Right.
And it was just a fun time. Vaquan was always the show. Great power in both hands, great speed. At the top of his game, you couldn't hit him. He was so fluid in there. He was just a great athlete, man. He had a solid boxing career. I think he could have gone down a little bit special. Tommy Yankello, a great trainer, has done great things with a lot of people. I think he did great with Vaquan. I just wish he could have, gotten a little more out of his pro career, but it was a disappointment. But amateur-wise, I don't think there's been one better around this area in recent memory.
In baseball, there have been baseball players, and football too, that have quit or retired, I should say, in the middle of the season because they said, I just can't get around the fastball anymore, or I can't throw, or I can't run. Mm-hmm. And they retired gracefully. In boxing, you don't really find out that you lost it until you're actually in the ring, right? And I remember at the Mountaineer, he fought a guy named Marty Robbins, who, was in the category of journeyman. And Marty, I thought, won that fight. Okay, but they gave it a draw. And right in front of my eyes, like I said to you before, when Riddick Bowe fought Andrew Galata before the fight, Riddick was great. And then after the fight, my dad noticed some differences in Riddick Bowe. During that fight, I'm talking about physically now, a fight that he should have blew Marty Robbins out of the water. I think that was the fight that Vaquan started on the decline. And that's a hell of a way to find out. And I'm with you guys. I thought he was going to just shoot to the top. He had the look. He had the personality. He had the physical attributes, everything that you'd need to check mark those boxes of being a star. And some people, I believe Sugar Ray Leonard's brother said something like, that guy has a chance to be the next Sugar Ray. Okay? But
nobody cared what Sugar Ray's brother got to say.
Oh, gosh.
Well, coming from him, say something that's close. Maybe he didn't like his brother. Or you never know. But yeah, unfortunately, the pro career wasn't what we all thought it was going to be. But he did sell
yes, he did.
Mountaineer, and he signed a contract with Mountaineer.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Thursdays or Wednesdays he would fight. Yeah. And Wednesday, I believe, was a slow night at the casino, but not when he fought. And Mountaineers, where I met Smokin' Jim. And but anyway, but yeah. So unfortunately, the career didn't go as well as we would have liked. The next guy, Monte Mesa Clay, who you mentioned. Monte was the IBA World Super Featherweight Champion. He was 37-5-22 out of Rankin, Pennsylvania, super lightweight. Number 1 ranked WBO. Was ranked number 4 by the IBF. Ranked number 9 by the WBA. He won over 50 fights in the amateurs. One thing about Monte, like you said, we say all the time, he was serious and dedicated to his craft. And he wanted it. And he just couldn't get over that edge. I remember one time I was in Florida, I want to say 2006 or maybe it was 5. He fought a guy named Edner Cherry, who was damn tough. And unfortunately, things didn't go the way we wanted with Monte. But Luther, your thoughts on Monte Mesa Clay, again, who's a great guy. Your thoughts on Monte?
Hey, Monte, man. Monte Mesa Clay was a great friend of the show. We've had him on here a number of times. I'm still mad that we didn't get the Monte Mesa Clay versus Vaquan Kimbrough at the pro level. I know they fought a lot at the amateur level. We needed to have that fight at the pro level. But Monte, he did some great things. He was on ESPN a number of times. Edner Cherry was a very tough fight. He's going to Mexico. I thought he fought a tough fight there. But his style, you have certain styles. He was in your pocket.
Sure was.
And he would take some to give some, and I think that shortened his career. Later on in his career, he started having shoulder injuries and different things. But he had the most exciting fights in this area in a while because you knew Monte was going to be in your pocket. He was going to take some just to give some. Good combinations, but just the injuries caught up to him. And fighting that type of style, it doesn't last long.
Right.
Because he avoided a lot of punches with his head movement. He would take them. He would eat a few to give a few, but he had some great, exciting fights. I still think he could have got a little more out of his career if he would have been a little more defensively responsible. But he had a solid career on ESPN a number of times, made a decent buck. But I think he could have gone a little bit more. But just an exciting fighter, hardworking, one of the most dedicated fighters. Even fought a little higher weight than I thought he could have been, but exciting fighter. Again, he was another guy, had Heinz Field laid out.
Yeah.
The casino, he had a big
Oh, the
fight
casino,
there
yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
Monte did some great things in this area to kind of bring the sport back, and I'm hoping some of these young guys could take it to the next level. But Monte was definitely friend of the show and a great boxing ambassador. Happy that he's, sometimes getting the recognition that he deserves, because he put it all out there, and he was a true warrior if anybody else was one.
Sure did. Smokin' Jim.
Well, I'm still looking for Rankin. I don't know where Rankin is, but I'd imagine he's the greatest that came out of Rankin. I met Monte, right before his first professional fight. It was going to be in Homewood and Brushton at the Greater Coliseum, and the promoters didn't have no money. So all the fighters walked out, man. I was disappointed. But I ended up watching all of Monte's fights. He was the Tasmanian Devil. His problem was he was short with short arms. Yeah. But I tell you what, he gave you everything he got. And I told you, I'm friends with Tommy Yankello, and that gym has always welcomed me with open arms. And every time I've gone out to that gym, which was several hundred times, no matter what time of day, Monte Clay was in there training. This was a hard worker. He learned it from Paul Spatafora. He gave you everything he had. He could sell a fight. He could talk trash. You know what I mean? He was a tough guy. He was a good-looking guy. He separated his business. Monte had just as many women as anybody else, but when he went into training, it was all business. Right. But as soon as that fight was over, the after party got
He let
wild.
the guard down.
Yeah,
right?
but Monte Mesa Clay, to this day, he's doing well in business. He had a very good hit on his shoulder.
Good guy.
Like Luther said, he took a lot of punches to get a few punches in, but he always had that good look. And he had a great combination because he was half African American and half Mexican, and you can't beat that combination for fighting.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story about Monte. One time he gave me a call and he said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Yeah, what's up?" He said, "I need some training." So you need me to help you train in boxing? He goes, no. I was asked to throw out the first pitch at the Pirate game.
Wow.
I never played through baseball.
Wow.
So we met at the Quaker Valley High School field. We played catch a little bit. Monte's a great guy. I've seen him a few times here over the years, and we're just always proud of his accomplishments, and wish that maybe he could have just gone over that next level.
Well, don't forget, Monte was a pretty good football player for Woodland Hills. He played wing back.
Okay, I can see that.
But when he went to Gateway High School Stadium, he could have used a little bit more training.
Well, again, trained by Tommy Yankello, he had some very exciting fights and really made a nice name for himself. And I'll tell you something about Pittsburgh, too. When you were a champion in Pittsburgh, you stay champion. You always get that respect. And I seen it. Monte and I attended some different events together, and people were always, cling to him, as they do with Vaquan on the boat ride, which you helped produce.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So the next guy is Rico War Saunders. Luther, we'll start with you. Rico War. Your thoughts on Rico and his career?
Right. Yeah. Rico's another guy who doesn't get Rico War Saunders. If you want a war, 154, 168, 175. Rico War Saunders was always there, man. He had, again, he's another guy. Had Heinz Field packed. There was a while that Rico was the biggest thing in boxing in this area. Always in shape. Always gave you everything he had. He'd get in there, great training. And he's still around the sport. He's still giving back to the amateurs. He just had a couple shows that we covered last year. Excellent boxer. He's fought a lot of great names. Sure has. Even fought Better Beeve at 175. Right. Yeah.
Luther, that was Better Beeve's first fight.
What did you say?
That was Better Beeve's first fight was against Rico War Saunders.
Right.
And the thing about Rico, never ducked anybody. How many times we talked on this show that this guy ducked that? He'd fight Fury tomorrow if he was asked. I mean, he was a fighter.
I think he'd fight now. Yeah, he's a fighter. He came, brought himself, out of a tough situation, came into the ring, made a great name for himself. Then he was in movies,
Wrote a book.
So it was in Creed and different things, Southpaw, all of it. So Rico's done well. He's done great for the sport, good amateur career, and he turned that over to the pro. Now he's a promoter doing things with the amateurs. Very proud of what Rico's accomplished.
And again, he wrote a book. Smokin' Jim, your thoughts on Rico Saunders?
And his book named Names, he didn't hide anything. Just like he didn't duck in the ring,
right.
In that book, he put everybody's name in there. First, last name. Man, that book is one heck of a read because he didn't use aliases. If you did some dirt, you were getting named.
Right.
Rico was one of a kind.
Jim? Well, he got in boxing late. He was in the same federal prison with Bernard Hopkins. And he came out and he was a cruiserweight, man. Yeah. And, Rico for a long, long time, man, did his own marketing and promotion because he really didn't trust white people. And he fought for the World Cruiserweight Championship outdoors at Heinz Field, and it was the first outdoor world championship fight since Ezra Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott. And Rico won. I think that Rico was his success. He was a natural 190-pounder, all muscle, but I remember he came to me and he was debating whether to move up to heavyweight or move down to light heavyweight. And like Luther said, he's a vegetarian, probably, and he was able to move 20 pounds of muscle down to light heavyweight. But had he was able to make the money at cruiserweight, he might have went down in history. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention another guy. Here's a guy who was a 3-time world tough man champion, fought on national TV, won it 3 years in a row, turned pro and was 6-0 as a heavyweight. All Lee McGinnis.
Because of great friend of the show, yes.
Yeah, because of religious reasons, he stepped down. Jehovah's Witnesses don't really believe in competing, so he stepped down. But he might have went on to become the world heavyweight champion. But we got to give him a little praise.
I'm glad you mentioned him. And the last guy, Salka, who's appeared on ESPN several times, fought some big name fights, 24-6, 4 KOs, super featherweight, NABA USA lightweight champ, 10 years in the National Guard. He served our country, and he had his biggest name fight was against Danny Garcia, which didn't fare too well. But Luther, and he's done well. He tried to be a politician. He's worked in business. I think he still is in politics. I know he is. So he's done well outside of the boxing ring. Luther, your thoughts on Raul Salka?
Yeah, Raul Salka got the most out of his career. Wasn't blessed with a whole lot of power, but he did. He was fluid in there. Got a couple big name fights. The Danny Garcia fight was one that he got and didn't fare too well. But Danny Garcia is a Hall of Famer, right. So there's nothing wrong with losing to Danny Garcia. But he was tough, like you said. He's turned his boxing career into politics. He's run for office. He's done some things on the political side. So, yeah, he got the most out of his career. He does have the 6 losses, but, he's fought on some big-name cards and fought some great opponents. So, and now he's transitioned to the political atmosphere. So I'm definitely proud of Rod.
Smokin' Jim.
Well, I'm not sure if the Mexicans like him. He wanted to build that wall. But, hey, listen, he one of the greatest, one of my best friends. He was a great prize fighter, man. He could stick and move. That jab was great. I never forgave my friend Mike Tyson for putting him and Monte Mesa Clay in the ring together. Mike Tyson believed that local guys should fight each other.
He's right.
And Luther believes that too. That broke my heart to see 2 of my friends trying to kill each other in the ring. But Rod Salka, what a great career he had, and he got a beautiful wife and a beautiful family. And I wish he just DM'd me recently.
Yeah, good guy. Okay, our popular segment, the Boxing Mailbag. You can write us the Boxing Mailbag at yahoo.com. Do it again, Boxing Mailbag at yahoo.com, or you can send it to my show, the Claudio Relsano Show, on claudiorelsano.com. This is for Jimmy from Toledo, Ohio. Years ago, Joe Louis, Jersey Joe Walcott, and other named people would referee fights, big fights. Why don't we see that anymore? And do you think we should have a name fight, referee fights?
Yeah, I agree. Back then, Joe Louis couldn't talk, so he had to referee. They taught him how to say break. But yeah, I agree that these guys have been in the ring. They know what to look for, and I would like to see more fighters give back to being referee or judge.
Even though Jersey Joe, there was some controversy whenever Ali and Liston fought the second time.
Yeah.
Kind of Jersey Joe was moving more as a ref than he did as a fighter.
Yeah.
Going back and forth. I mean, so I'm fine with them being a ref, but they may need a little more training with some of the rules. All right. Real quick, Luther, we got 1 minute. Al from Boston. What is harder, MMA to box or box to a boxer participating in MMA?
Wow, let's see. We've seen MMA guys come over here and get knocked out consistently, and we've seen boxers go over there and get demolished, like James Toney did. I always go with boxing. I think those guys come over here thinking, "Hey, I do it," and they come out here and get knocked out. Going over to MMA though, you have to use both parts. You got to use your arms, your legs. I'm gonna go with MMA. Might be tougher because you have to use wrestling, boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, whatever. I think that's a harder sport to transition to. No one's had success there.
Well, as always, we hope you enjoy our show as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Boxing Authorities.